What's going on, everybody? It's etaprime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the best budget 1440p cards on the market at the time of making this video. This is Intel's brand new ARC B580, and it's based on their Battle Mage architecture. So we've got the Xe2 Cores here, and if you're a regular viewer of the channel, I do love my ARC GPUs, be it iGPUs or dedicated GPUs like this. When it comes to this new era of DGPUs, Intel does have a lot to gain, and I think with the B580, they've checked off a lot of boxes, and given the price point here, these are going to be starting at $249. I think this is going to make sense to a lot of people, and this is actually positioned as a 1440p card. They've also given us some new technology that we didn't see with their first A-series or Alchemist cards, like XeSS Frame Generation. That's something we'll definitely be taking a look at in this video. But before we jump into it, I do want to mention that this video is sponsored by Vip-Urcdkey. I've been using this site for quite some time now. They offer Steam keys, Uplay, Ubisoft, but the main thing I pick up over here are Windows 11 Pro keys. And right now, if you use code ETA, you can get 30% off. So at checkout, we'll just enter the code ETA. That's going to bring the price down to $20.40 for a full Windows 11 Pro key. They're going to email you that key, and then you can activate Windows. Speaking of that, let's head over to a new PC that I recently built. As you can see, we're running Windows 11, and from Settings, we're going to go to Activation Settings. It's going to tell us that we're not active. We don't have a key installed, so we're just going to paste it right in here. Choose Next. It's going to activate Windows for us, and we're ready to go. If you're in need of cheap Windows keys, I'll leave a link in the description, and remember, you can use code ETA for 25% off. So getting right back into it, like I mentioned, we've got the new Intel ARC B580. This card only requires one 8-pin power connector, and they do recommend at least a 600-watt power supply with the B580. When it comes to I/O, this thing has one HDMI 2.1A port and three 2.1 display ports. The version of the card that we're going to be taking a look at in this video is the Intel Special Edition. So we've got that blacked out design. It's very minimalistic, and they did the same thing with the A750 and the A770. Personally, some of my favorite looking cards, especially if you're going with a sleek, minimal build. But keep in mind, Acer, ASRock, Gunner, Maxsun, Onyx, and Sparkle will be offering the B580 with their own twist on it, and these are going to be releasing December 13th, starting at $249. So getting right down to the specs here, again, we've got that Intel ARC B580. This is sporting 20 Xe2 cores, 5 render slices, 160 vector engines, 160 XMX engines, 20 ray tracing units, 12 gigabytes of 192-bit GDDR6 VRAM. It's got a graphics clock of 2,670 megahertz and a peak up to 2850. And of course, when a manufacturer releases a new GPU, they give us all kinds of slides. They're putting this up against the RTX 4060, which is coming in a bit more expensive when you're purchasing it new. Retail on the 4060 is $300, retail on the B580 is $249, but I have not been able to see a shelf SKU yet. So I'm not sure if they're going to be upcharging for bigger coolers over there when you get the third-party cards. As we know, these ARC cards do support XeSS, which is Intel's super sampling. We've also got XeSS Frame Gen, but it's not system-wide. Developers will have to implement it inside of their games. And new Xe low latency technology. So with all three of these paired up, we can expect some really awesome performance out of the B580, but all of this is going to trickle down to their iGPUs. So something like the Lunar Lake with that 140V iGPU will be able to take advantage of frame generation and low latency. So that's something I'm super excited about for the ARC iGPUs, but obviously we need to put this inside of a PC to get some testing out of the way. This is a build I did a couple months ago, and this is kind of turned into my main rig. Basically what we've got here is an Intel i7-14700K and an Asus TUF Z790 motherboard. I've got 32 gigabytes of Viper RAM running at 7,000 megahertz. And an 850-watt power supply, which is going to be overkill for the B580. I mean, after all, it only requires one 8-pin PCIe connector. It's just got that Intel ARC on the side that lights up with a white LED, and I mean, it's super clean. So jumping right in here with Windows 11, as you can see, we've got that Intel ARC B580, 12 gigs of VRAM, and this system here is powered by the i7-14700K, stock clocks over there, 32 gigs of DDR5 at 7000. This thing has been really quick. I'm really impressed with the 1440p performance out of this thing, given the price point. And with these new Battlemage cards, we will be getting a new Intel Graphics Center, Control Center, whatever you want to call it here. It's definitely a bit different. They've given us some really nice updates here, and moving down just a bit to our profiles, got our games, it's going to automatically scan our libraries. I can set up different profiles. I can use a profile here, VSync off, on, smooth sync, smart sync. I personally haven't been using these profiles here, but it's set up so it's really easy to use. Moving down to graphics, frame sync, again, we can go across the board with smooth sync, smart sync, we can disable it, turn it on. FPS limiter, we've got their new low latency mode, and this is great. We've got an on mode and an on boost. Basically, it's going to improve the latency between your input and graphics rendering. So once we get more games on the market that support XeSS new frame gen technology, this is really going to help out. Moving to display, we can totally customize how our display looks, and of course we've got our performance section. On-screen monitor, you can bring this up at any time if you want to, but we've also got a tuning section, so our GPU tuning, advanced, and with this, at least at the time I'm making this video, I can go up plus 20 on the GPU. So just take that power limit from 100 up to 120%. Voltage limit can also be changed. There's some VRAM tuning we can also do here, and we can fully adjust the fan curve on this new B580. I'm just going to discard these changes because I've been testing this thing out stock, and performance here is great. The first thing I really wanted to check out here was total TGP, or total graphics power, out of this new B580, and I use FurMark for this. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. We've got the resolution maxed out, and right here, board power draw, close to 190, and I'm pretty sure if we up that power limit from the tuning software they gave us, we could do up to around 210, but it's anywhere between 180 to 190, which isn't that bad given the performance this thing's putting out. And I mean, we're putting 100% load on this B580 right now. And since I was able to get a review unit of this B580 directly from Intel, they also hooked me up with their AI Playground software. Now this is pretty cool. It's just really easy to use. Image generator, image enhancement, answer some questions for you. From create, we'll go ahead and put a prompt in, and this is actually pretty quick. It uses 20 steps. Generate. And this is going to run solely on that B580. You can see 20-step process. Not too bad. And the second one's going to be a lot faster. So yeah, this was pretty cool. And I haven't tested out the image enhancer yet. Obviously, a lot of these manufacturers are really pushing the AI capabilities of these new GPUs, but what I'm most interested in is gaming. And the first thing I wanted to take a look at were some benchmarks on this card. We're going to be using 3D Mark for this, and when it comes to Steel Nomad, total score here on this machine, 3090. Now I went back with an RTX 4060 from Zotac with 8 gigs of VRAM, ran the same exact test, and with that card installed, same system, 2,544. So the B580, at least with the Steel Nomad benchmark, and remember, these are synthetics, is beating out that RTX 4060. And given the price of the B580, that's really where it's positioned. With Firestrike, we scored a 33,856, 29,602 on the RTX 4060. And finally, Time Spy coming in with a total score of 15,437. With the RTX 4060 installed, 12,825. But keep in mind, these are synthetic benchmarks, and in the past, we've seen these ARC GPUs kind of bench out higher than some other cards, but not when it comes to real-world gaming. But that has really changed when it comes to the new B580, especially at that 1440p mark. I went through and tested a couple games on each card. I just wanted to give you an idea here. So with each one of these games we're taking a look at with these graphs, there's no scaling. So no XeSS, no DLSS. Borderlands 3, 1440p, Ultra, 71 on the 4060, up to 82 on the B580. Dota 2 is a little bit of a different story, but I mean, these are kind of trading blows with each other. 1440 Ultra, the 4060 came out with an average of 209, and the B580, 188. Horizon Zero Dawn, non-remastered version, 90 on the 4060, 94 on the B580. And finally, Resident Evil 4, 1440, Ultra, 4060, 79. And with that B580, it was a pretty significant jump, going up to 99 FPS on average. Now I want to get into some real-world gaming and show this off. So one of the main new features here for the B580 is XeSS Frame Gen. So it's not system-wide. Developers do have to implement this inside of their game, and one that I was able to get access to, or early access to, is F1 2024. This is a beta branch with XeSS Frame Generation, and this is going to trickle down to Lunar Lake iGPUs. So right there you can see we've got XeSS Frame Gen enabled. We're at 1440p ultra high, and I'm just going to run the built-in benchmark with and without Frame Gen. Up in the top right hand corner, I do have Intel's Present Mon on, and this is just kind of for my own information, but that frame counter is not capturing the generated frames using XeSS Frame Gen. The game's internal benchmark results will show us what Frame Gen can do for something like this. And again, I ran it with and without Frame Gen, 1440p, very high. Without Frame Gen, we averaged 75 FPS, but with XeSS Frame Gen on, we averaged 131. That's a 56 FPS increase, and with this, I wasn't using Intel's new low latency mode. You can see that it did add around 2 milliseconds of latency to our frame times there, but the low latency mode can be used in conjunction with XeSS Frame Gen. Now, in all actuality, when it comes down to it, 1440 ultra high F1 2024 with no Frame Gen getting an average of 75. I wouldn't mind playing it just like that. Once more developers start implementing XeSS Frame Gen in their games, I will come back to this because there's a lot of games that I'd like to test with it. But unfortunately, at the time of making this video here, this was the only game I had access to that had Frame Gen for XeSS. Next up, we've got God of War Ragnarok 1440p Ultra with XeSS set to balanced, and we're not using AMD's Frame Gen here. I'm seeing an average of around 82 FPS with this game, which is really good at that 1440p resolution because after all, we are at that Ultra preset with this game.
A flute? Oh, will you play a song, brother? It was my daughter.
This thing's going to handle esports games like a boss at 1440p. Overwatch 2, epic settings, no scaling, true 1440p resolution, 192 FPS on average. Next one I wanted to throw in here is my favorite arcade racer, Forza Horizon 5 1440 extreme settings. I actually thought we'd see a little more out of this. Now I'm not complaining because we are over 100 FPS, actually 117 FPS on average. But it does seem that with this game here, I have been seeing better performance with the RTX 4060 and even something like the RX 760 at 1440p. Doom Eternal, I just really wanted to see how it would handle this game, and we're at 1440 Ultra Nightmare. I've got the in-game metrics up in the top right-hand corner. You can see we're not using any kind of resolution scale. And by the end of this test, we had an average of 142 FPS. Here's Spider-Man Remastered, and I also tested out Miles Morales, but yeah, I mean, they're based on the same engine. I'm seeing the same kind of performance between the two. 1440p, very high, no XeSS. It's not needed with this, and we're getting an average of over 120 FPS. And the final game I wanted to test for this video was Cyberpunk 2077. Right now, we're at 1440p Ultra with XeSS set to quality. It usually goes to auto, but I do think it was kind of going down to balance. I was seeing a higher frame rate, but less fidelity, so I just took it to quality. Personally, it's hard for me to tell the difference between native and quality XeSS on the monitor I'm using anyway. With these settings, it's absolutely trucking through this game, getting an average of 89 FPS. It's more than enough for my needs. I mean, at 1440p, the game looks absolutely amazing. But Intel has been talking a lot about ray tracing on the B580. And I'm just going to put it out there. If you've ever tried Cyberpunk at Ray Tracing Ultra on basically anything, you know how hard it can be on your system. We're going to take it up to Ray Tracing Ultra. We're going to leave XeSS to auto, and we're going to see what kind of frame rates we can get out of Cyberpunk 2077 Ray Tracing Ultra on the B580. So, I mean, I had a feeling it was going to drop under 60. We're not working with a super high-end card. I mean, the card itself is $249, but it's hanging in there. With XeSS set to auto, I'd say we're going down close to XeSS performance, but I don't think we're quite there. It is getting pretty close, so what I want to do is just take XeSS to performance. We're going to leave ray tracing at ultra, 1440p, and I'll tell you what, I'm actually really impressed by what we're seeing here, but we're not at a true 1440p with ray tracing set to ultra. We took XeSS to performance. So I'd say if you did want to run this game with ray tracing set to ultra, I would drop it down to 1080p. We've got 20 ray tracing units here, but again, I mean, it's really holding its own for an ARC GPU. When it comes down to it, I think Intel has done a great job with their second generation ARC GPUs. This is the B580, and if you remember correctly, Intel did release an A580, so I'm really interested to see if they're going to release a B750 and a B770. Just taking a look at the performance that the B580 is putting out right now at that $249 price tag, I'd love to see some B700 cards hit the market and dominate at 4K, but only time will tell. I'm not exactly sure if they're going to be releasing a B700 series, but until then, I do think that this is a great budget 1440p card. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. I do want to pair this up with a lower end machine just to see what we could do over there. And I'm really excited about new XeSS Frame Generation added to games down the road. If you're interested in learning a little more about the B580 or maybe picking one up, I'll leave links in the description. And if there's anything else you want to see running on this card, just let me know in the comments below. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.